So I figure today I'll do up a rose and show you how I do that. I've been doing a lot of these guys recently. I had one more order come in for one, and maybe some of the smoke will clear off out of here. It's kind of breezy and windy this morning, so getting a little bit of backdraft down the flue. But now that I got a little bit of heat going up it should all suck right up, clear off. I'll try to show you. I think you can see what I'm doing here. If not, I'll pull you a little closer as we go. But we're starting out with enough to be able to hold on to, but 1/4 inch square. It's just mild steel. And I'll be using my go-to little lightweight hammer for some of this. My hot cut, pair of pliers. Eventually, if I need to, I'll use a pair of tongs as well. Pliers we're going to actually set right here out of the way. And I will also be using a larger rounding hammer. This is not a rounding hammer, but it's a cross peen with a pretty good round face to it. But the importance is it's about a 4.5, 5 pound cross peen. So I'll use that. Those are kind of the tools we're going to need today. We're going to heat up maybe 4 inches of this bar and then bend it kind of 90 degrees after we set down just a little bit of that so about 4 inches is hot. Come to the edge of the anvil. We're going to actually half on, half off blows. Clean up our taper there real quick that I drew, and I'll show that to you. Get everything straight again. So I think I actually did, out of that we got maybe 2 inches of what will become petal. But what I did there, you can see kind of at that angle best. But what I did was I necked it down, and that will actually be the transition between the bud and the stem, what will become the stem. Now what we'll do, we'll take another heat, and I will go ahead and bend that 90 degrees right there at that transition point. That looks maybe right there, you can see it the best, but I need to make one of those pointer hands. But right here is where that's going to be, and we'll bend this up, then we'll flatten it out partially, and then start cutting in our petals. So remember a couple videos back I talked about using every bit of your anvil? Well, right here in the pressure roll, we'll just bend that, make a nice easy bend. Then what I'm doing here, I'm actually not hammering on the flat, I'm hammering down on the bias. What that allows us to do is actually create more of a spread in that shape. So I'm doing two things here. I use a square hammer because it allows me to use the face of that hammer kind of like a fuller. So I'm hammering down kind of at an angle, just a slight angle, and what that does is it allows me to draw the steel out along the length of that, increase that as I'm flattening it out a little bit. Draw some of the steel from the spread into a length. Maybe now you can actually see what I'm talking about. When I'm talking half on, half off, so when I hammer, I actually have half of that hammer face off of the anvil, the edge of the anvils. Let's see, there we go. The edge of the anvil comes about halfway through our hammer when we're hammering down on the half on, half off on the edge. Now when I'm drawing out, I'm actually holding it at a slight angle, like this, as I move down through the piece, or move the piece down through the hammering plane, because you really want to consistently hit in the sweet spot of your anvil, which is generally right through the center of the anvil. That's where all the mass is and everything, so it gives you the best bang for your buck as you're hammering. Check our heat here. Good enough, I can work a little bit. And I don't want it too wide down through there, so we'll take and stretch it a little bit more that way. Keep that width this way the same all the way down through that length. Let's see. You can see there's still a little bit of growing there happening, so we'll do this and keep it adjusted. So you can see it's pretty cold. It's still hot, but relatively cold. And we now have about a 4-inch piece flattened out. It might be an actual 1/8 of an inch in thickness by, I'd say, 1/4 inch by 4 inches. So, well, it might be actually closer to a 1/2 inch wide, but it's somewhere there. Next step, we're going to actually cut in some of the petals. I'm going to switch out hammers here for a sec. This is my beater hammer. It's an okay hammer, but it's a little soft, so I don't feel bad if I muck up the face of it real bad. You know, honestly, a hammer's a tool. It needs dressed from time to time, so it's not a real big deal if you do cut through a piece with a regular hammer that you use on a regular basis. The danger, though, in using a hardened hammer when you're hitting these hardened tools is that high carbon steel, when it's hardened, becomes brittle, and it will shoot off a chunk, or it has the potential to shoot off a chunk and become shrapnel. And believe it or not, it comes off of there with the same force as a bullet, so it doesn't feel good, and it parts your flesh pretty quickly. So you really want to use a soft hammer when you're doing cut-offs and stuff like that. So we'll come in about maybe a 1/2 inch off the back side there. You're going to try and cut about halfway through. Give it, 3/4 of an inch. Cut about halfway through. maybe 3/4 of an inch again. Well, we'll cut it back a little bit. We'll do about a 1/2 inch so we have more than 3 petals on here. And then we'll cut this last one in half. Alright, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. Alright, now we're going to switch over to that big hammer and we're going to spread those petals out just a little bit. Or a whole lot, rather. Hopefully you'll notice that as this stuff gets thinner, it takes less time to heat up. Do apologize for the ringing, but you know, it's an anvil, they ring. We're starting to get there. Particularly as it gets thinner, you need to be patient and watch your heats. Don't overwork your steel cold. You'll wind up cracking it and it'll break off at each one of those petal cuts. And if you get that neck too thin, right at the start of your bud, it'll crack off right there and you'll really be hurting yourself. No fun to put a lot of work into it this far and start rolling that thing up and have it crack off. We're getting fairly thin. So what I did when I turned it over and used the cross peen, it actually stretched it this way some and allowed that exterior petal to be a little bit longer. I'll probably do that on that next petal as well. We'll leave the last 3 inner petals fairly unadulterated. Really all I'm doing right now is planishing. I don't like the grooves from the cross peen in there, so I like to smooth them out by using the rounded face of the hammer. Now we're kind of to the fun stage. You're actually going to see this rose become a rose rather than, you know, some blobbish mess of what's essentially sheet metal. you want to get that corner where it's that 90-degree bend. You want to get that bit in the heart of your fire, because that's where we're working first. That's where we've got to make a nice tight little roll. And I will use those pliers early on. I'll start probably working on that area. But if not, then I'll use the step of the anvil right here where it comes down right in here. I'll use that to help make that first bend and start that rolling action. These are called roll-up roses or Russian roses. I used to think it was Russian like you're in a rush, because these are fairly easy to make. They don't really take a whole lot of time, and once you know what you're doing, you can knock them out fast. So I used to think they were called a Russian rose, because I'd always be making them for my buddies in a rush to help get them out of the doghouse. So what I do to get this started, and I am going to use the step, swap out my little hammer. Hopefully I've still got enough heat, but I'll just come in and tuck and tuck and tuck and tuck and tuck, and just kind of work that corner just a little bit. When I start to get a little bit of a curl there to it, I think you can see that. Yeah, there. That's the angle we want. When you start to get that, you can actually kind of, well, it's cold, but if you still have heat, you can kind of come down on that. And just, I like to make that first petal kind of come into a cone shape. Just like a brand new open bud, if you look down in there, the center of it's kind of coned up. Now when you get real good and you stop worrying so much about being able to see what you're doing, you can actually roll these up inside the fire, and it makes it a little bit easier. So come over here to the corner. Take another heat, specifically right in here, and I can actually mold that almost like it was clay with these pliers. I'd use my fingers if it weren't so blooming hot, but I like to be able to feel things, and I already have two thumbs I can't feel stuff on. One from a deep cut that I got in my previous employment, and one from working in kitchens and burning the crap out of it too much. That step likes to collect all that scale, so make sure you blow it off pretty good if you're going to use it. I see a lot of guys brush it too. You can use a brush, you can blow it if you got strong lungs. Now, I'm full of hot air, so, you know, it's just as expedient to blow it off as it is to brush it. Feel me? So, we're at a nice high yellow heat there, and we'll come in real quick. Very, very quick. It does decide it doesn't like to keep that heat very long because it is so thin. And you just kind of spin it back here with one hand and work it around with the pliers in the other. You really get that nice and tight little roll there. See how nice and coned up it is and tight? Well, with the next ones, we'll open it just a little bit and be a little looser on it. But it does get bigger and wider and further away from the center as you go, so. You gotta make sure your pedals stay hot, okay? That's the kicker and ticket on getting this stuff to do, is it has to be nice and thin and really, really hot. So we get it to start rolling again and just kind of find a point and start scrunching her in. you can kind of see that rose starting to take shape in the center there. I'll squeeze that just a touch tighter there. Back in the fire. Forgot for a second, I'm trying to show you guys how to do this. Started rolling it up in the fire. Bad boy. Make our pliers just a little bigger so we can actually get that to really start doing its thing. On that last petal, I like to just kind of tuck it with the hammer just a little bit there. Now, doesn't really look too much like a rose. It just looks like a rolled up, tortilla or something. You can kind of see it down in there. Now comes the part that's my favorite part, actually shaping out those outer petals so that it looks like it's just started to bloom. Or giving it life. This is the part that the artistry actually takes effect. And everybody's different. Every single rose I've ever made is different. They're like snowflakes. I can have them side by side and really, really try hard to make them look the same. Not a one of them ever looks the same. So, don't worry about that. 1, 2 little pliers. I prefer these channel locks to scrolling pliers because scrolling pliers, I have pinched the ever-living doodah out of my fingers if they slip while you're actually working on scrolling. They're very helpful sometimes, but with these roses, I prefer channel locks. Ones that I can actually get real nice and tight, good grip on, still have a little bit of room. I can roll these fairly well. These are just going to hold the stem right at the base of the rose for me. These ones I'm just going to hold it right there, support it on the anvil. Try and make it so you can see how I do this. But really, we're very simple. I described it fairly well earlier. You're just gonna kind of open it up and roll that upper edge. Again, it has to be really hot to be able to do this. Or you're gonna hurt yourself trying to force it. So, kind of see how that petal opened up a little bit there. We'll come in and do the other one on the other side. And do that third petal as well, a little less so. clamp right there, hold that, and I'm gonna start bending, bending, and bending. You can see how this stupid thing likes to move around a lot. That's why you got to keep those pedals hot, so that as they move, they don't wind up breaking and cracking off on you. So just kind of knock that back down where I can actually, you know, maybe get to some of these other pedals. We might work that up a little bit more. I normally put quite a few more pedals on this, but it's just a little tiny rose. You can kind of see it starting to really look rose-like there. And what I'll probably do the next heat is I'll probably drop it down in here so that I can work with the tip of my hammer, maybe just a touch on those pedals. All I'm doing is kind of holding the base of that rose with the pliers and just kind of lightly, really lightly tapping that down. Out of heat. So with the next heat, what I'll do is I'll actually probably open this pedal back up just a little bit so I can really get a good grip on that little booger right there and kind of just torque it just a little bit. And then maybe with the same heat knock this bud down just a touch. Now what I like to do is I like to just let gravity knock that scale off. Make sure it's where I want it to be. You know, it's still got a little heat to it, so I can actually kind of adjust it, micro adjustments there. But that's your little roll-up rose, the bud and the petals and all that. Let's work down the stem just a bit. I'm going to cool down the petals. Now, if I was making long stemmed roses, I'd work it down, neck it down to the diameter I really want the stem to be, and then I'd work it that long, round it all up, or octagon it up. I like the look of the little facets. It looks like the stem has been stripped of thorns. So, you know, I kind of like that. But for this one, this is going to be a little rose going to a local lady and her daughter, for her daughter. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave it about in here, this being the stem, and I'll probably come back down in here somewhere and actually cut it off, flip it around, work that stem out so that I can curlicue it so it'll stand up. So we'll do that, and then I'll show you how I tweak it to make it stand up. So I cheat with my hot cut. I cut from 2 directions to start that little point there, that tapered point. Then I come in and I actually bend it back and forth until it breaks off. We'll swap this over, hold the parent stock with these, this with these, so that it's easier. Then we cool off that bit and we go back into the fire, flip around. So get rid of those. That's gone. I'm going to draw that taper purposefully down to a tip. Then we're going to come in here right about, say, there somewhere. And we're going to set it down. We're going to do that in 2 directions. Now, if it takes more than 1 heat to do that for you, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Take 2 heats. So, I don't know if you can see that red or not here in the light, but here, maybe. That's starting to look a little leaf-like. Maybe the wrong leaf for a rose, but it is a leaf. I'm a veggie gardener, not a flower gardener. Sorry guys, I'm a blacksmith. So for those of you who don't like that bean leaf shit, we'll go with maybe something closer to a big rose petal, rose leaf. Let's see, maybe something more along those lines, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if you can actually make that out or not, but we did actually texture that rose leaf a little bit. Come back with these pliers, because I like to cheat. Need to take another heat right through here on this section right through here and get a little bit more heat there, and then we can actually make that bend. That's kind of it, aside from the tweaking. Let's see how she's done so far. Doubt it. Yep, nope, nope, nope. Nope, nopety, nope. So, we shall heat this section here up and bend it more that way. You put that in the fire in just such a way that the leaf actually sits up and the petals are out of the fire. You'll have less issues with those areas getting burned up or getting overheated. Ta-da! She stands. She stands for all to say. So guys, this is my my paint booth here. It's the back side of the shop. See? Yeah, and just some clear spray paint over that. Other more traditional finishes would be beeswax, a little bit of blacksmith's goop or jelly, which is beeswax and some hardeners and a little bit of paraffin, beeswax, and some turpentine mixed together with a Japanese hardener, I think it's called. Or some boiled linseed oil, affectionately termed blow, B-L-O. Anyways, that's about that for that little rose. We'll see what else I can get into today, but for the most part, I think that's going to be it.